She had just been handed her first bagel in 17 months. The exhaustion was written across her face. The winning streak was over. But as Eala walked off center court in Toronto, she wasn't just leaving a tournament behind. She was saying goodbye to a city that had embraced her like family, and her words left the stands in tears. The scoreboard told one story, but the crowd told another, 6-4, 6-0. In just 73 minutes, Belinda Bencic had dismantled Eala's 7-match winning streak and ended her Canadian Open campaign in the round of 16. The Swiss Olympic gold medalist had cracked the code against the Filipinos' left-handed game, consistently finding sharp serve angles and winning with her second shot. But as Eala walked off center court at Sobe Stadium, the 10,000-plus Filipino fans who had packed the stands didn't stop cheering. They waved their flags. They chanted her name. They stood and applauded a young woman who had given them everything she had. The first set had offered a glimpse of Eala's fighting spirit. She opened the match strongly, holding to love for 1-0. Bencic responded immediately, leveling at 1-1 before breaking to lead 2-1. Eala broke back to level at 2-2, then again at 4-4 to keep the set alive. But Bencic edged ahead to 5-4 and closed it out with sharp serving. The second set was one-sided. Bencic jumped to 2-0, then 5-0, and closed it out 6-0. The fatigue that had been building for 8 matches in 12 days had finally caught up with Eala. She had played 5 matches in Washington, culminating in a rain-delayed final that stretched across 2 days. Then she had flown straight to Toronto and added 3 more victories to extend her winning streak to 7 matches, the longest of her career. Belinda put me in some tough situations. I think she played really well. I wasn't able to kind of get myself out of a certain mode, Eala admitted after the match. Overall, a really good week. I am super happy with the run that I've had. But it was her final moments on center court that would be remembered. As she walked toward the exit, the crowd erupted one final time. Eala stopped, turned, and waved to the stands that had embraced her like family. She knew she wouldn't be back on that court for a while. And then she was gone, but not without leaving something behind. A city in tears, a community grateful, and a promise to come back stronger. The exhaustion was visible, the emotion was raw, and for the first time Eala let the world see what this grueling run had cost her. After 73 minutes on center court, after a 6-4, 6-0 defeat that snapped her 7-match winning streak, Eala sat down for her post-match press conference. The words came slowly at first, then with growing clarity. It's always tough, of course, after a loss, but like I said, I'm looking back at these past, maybe 2 weeks, as a really big positive. I think I've played really well. I've gotten through so many obstacles, Eala said, but then came the admission that made the room pause. Of course, right now, there's that initial, just kind of a little tired and down from the match, she confessed. The numbers told the story of her exhaustion. She had played 8 matches in roughly 12 days, winning 7 in hugely impressive fashion. She had played 5 matches in Washington, culminating in a rain-delayed final that stretched across 2 days. Then she had flown straight to Toronto and added 3 more victories to extend her winning streak to 7 matches, the longest of her career. The physical toll was evident. After shaking hands with Bencic, Eala returned to her bench, visibly drained. There was no exuberant celebration, no raised arms, no triumphant roar. Just exhaustion. Pure, unadulterated exhaustion. But even in her exhaustion, Eala refused to make excuses. She acknowledged the struggle, but she also acknowledged the privilege of the struggle. I'm healthy, which is something I'm super grateful for. It's something that's obviously on the top of my priority all the time, she said. She credited Bencic for the performance that ended her run. Yeah, tough one today. I think Belinda put me in some tough situations. I think she played really well. I wasn't able to kind of get myself out of a certain mode, Eala admitted. The fatigue from 8 matches in 12 days had finally caught up with her. But instead of dwelling on the defeat, Eala was already looking ahead. To Cincinnati, to New York, to the next chapter of her extraordinary journey. I'm counting my blessings. I'm taking the lessons that I've had from these 2 weeks and hopefully implementing them even more and in a better way in Cincinnati and New York, she said. They had sold out the stadium. They had filled the stands with red, white, and blue flags. They had chanted her name until their voices gave out. The Filipino diaspora in Toronto had transformed the National Bank Open into something the tournament had never seen before. Tickets for Eala's matches had sold out in minutes. The tournament had added chicken adobo and lumpiang Shanghai to the menu for the first time in its history. The 10,000-plus center court had been packed with Filipino fans waving flags, turning the venue into a sea of red, white, blue, and yellow. It's the kind of noise that accompanies a Grand Slam win, and this is just the second round here in Toronto. Play-by-play man Mark Pecci said on the WTA Tour World Television feed after Eala's opening victory. The one and only, the extraordinary Eala doing things in tennis that just seem out of this world. Tournament director Carl Hale, who had been running the Canadian Open for nearly 2 decades, was stunned by the phenomenon. We've never seen a player ranked outside the top 5 have this type of effect, Hale told reporters. A sold-out Wednesday night this early in the tournament is really unheard of. The support extended beyond the stadium. Even the concession stands got into the spirit, selling chicken adobo, rice bowls, and lumpia. A Filipino flag was displayed at the food stall, and fans queued up to try the local favorites. It's the first time I've ever heard of a tournament halfway through adding a food offering just because of a player, Hale admitted. Alex is putting the Filipino community on the map and giving inspiration to everyone, said Warren Paul Catacautan, a Filipino from Toronto who organized a group gathering to watch Eala, designing custom t-shirts with her name and the words Rise, Believe, Inspire. And as Eala walked off center court for the final time, waving to the crowd and blowing kisses, the stands erupted one final time. The chants of Eala, Eala echoed through the night. The crowd that had come to watch her play was now serenading her goodbye. Even her opponents couldn't help but admire the atmosphere. Belinda Bencic, the woman who had ended Eala's run, praised the energy after her victory. I know most of you guys were cheering for Alex, but I still have to say it was very nice for me to play in front of you all. Thank you so much for the great crowd tonight. It's the pleasure of my life to experience crowds like this, Eala said in her post-match press conference. The farewell wasn't about defeat. It was about gratitude. And the crowd that wouldn't stop cheering made sure she knew it. The most emotional moment came not on the court, but in the press conference room. A reporter asked Eala about the overwhelming support she had received throughout the tournament. Her response brought tears to the room. You can see I am kind of just like a drop in the ocean, when it comes to Filipinos and their pride for their culture and where they come from, Eala said, her voice carrying the weight of the moment. I do a lot to kind of represent my country, and I'm very proud of it. But you see, the stadium was full of people who do the same thing, right? She paused, gathering her thoughts. So I guess that just shows you what kind of a community we are, and what kind of a people we are, and how supportive we are of each other. The words struck a chord with everyone who heard them. Eala wasn't just a tennis player to the Filipino diaspora. She was a symbol, a reminder of home, of identity, of a culture that spans the globe. And in that moment, she reminded everyone that she doesn't carry the weight of a nation alone. She carries it alongside the millions who support her. The atmosphere this whole week has been just incredible, she said. It's hard to describe to other people kind of the feeling of being in that stadium full of fans and all the love. I'm super grateful for the experiences that I've had here in Toronto. It's been an amazing debut, so yeah, I'll carry these memories with me for a really long time. The scenes at Sobeys Stadium had been unlike anything the Canadian Open had ever witnessed. The tournament had sold chicken adobo and lumpiang Shanghai for the first time in its history. The 10,000-plus fans had packed center court, waving Philippine flags and turning the venue into a sea of red, white, blue, and yellow. Even her opponents couldn't help but admire the atmosphere. Belinda Bencic, the woman who had ended Eala's run, praised the energy after her victory. I know most of you guys were cheering for Alex, but I still have to say it was very nice for me to play in front of you all. I'm counting my blessings, Eala said. I'm taking the lessons that I've had from these 2 weeks and hopefully implementing them even more in a better way in Cincinnati and New York. And with that, she reminded the world that she carries her country with her wherever she goes. The tears were there. The exhaustion was visible. But Eala's farewell was not one of defeat. It was one of gratitude, resilience, and hope. I definitely will take maybe 2 days off, a day or two. I do have to travel to Cincinnati, she said, a smile breaking through the exhaustion. I need to get a haircut. I haven't gotten a haircut in a while. My nails are grown out. She laughed. And in that moment, the weight of the past 2 weeks seemed to lift, if only for a second. So yeah, I'll do a couple things just to get my mind off tennis. I think Toronto's a great place to do that. But the laughter was short-lived. Because when she was asked about the support she had received, the flags, the chants, the 10,000 fans who had packed center court, Eala's voice caught. It's the pleasure of my life to experience crowds like this, she said. I'm like a tiny drop in the ocean when we talk about Filipinos and the pride they feel for their culture and their heritage. I do a lot to represent my country, and I'm very proud of it, but the stadium was full of people who do the same. She paused, gathering her thoughts. That shows what kind of community we are and how much we support each other. The city that had embraced her like family would now have to say goodbye. But Eala promised to come back stronger. She leaves the Canadian Open with $81,800, roughly $4.9 million, for reaching the round of 16. She will also share $15,800 with Venus Williams after their first-round run in doubles. Now she heads to Cincinnati for the next WTA 1000 event, where she will be seeded number 18, receiving a first-round bye. Then, the U.S. Open awaits. I'm counting my blessings, Eala said. I'm taking the lessons that I've had from these 2 weeks and hopefully implementing them even more and in a better way in Cincinnati and New York. The loss in Toronto was a footnote. The journey was just beginning, and as Eala waved goodbye to the city that had embraced her, one thing was clear. She would be back. What happens when a young woman from Manila walks off a court in defeat, but leaves an entire city in tears? What happens when her farewell isn't about the loss, but about the love she found? And when Eala steps onto the court in Cincinnati, will the world finally understand that her story is far from over? Eala's Canadian Open campaign came to an end with a 6-4, 6-0 loss to Belinda Bencic, snapping her 7-match winning streak. But her farewell was not one of defeat, it was one of gratitude. She called the Toronto crowd the pleasure of my life and described herself as just a drop in the ocean when it comes to Filipino pride. Now she heads to Cincinnati for a well-deserved break, a haircut, some rest, and then back to work. The journey continues. If you enjoyed this story, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We bring you the biggest stories in tennis, drama, and emotion every single week. Don't miss what happens next.